Welcome, esteemed colleagues and scholars, to an in-depth exploration of one of the most seminal figures of the medieval intellectual tradition, Albertus Magnus. Known as Albert the Great, he was a towering polymath whose contributions span the domains of philosophy, natural science, and theology. Born circa 1200, Albertus Magnus earned the epithet Doctor Universalis, the universal doctor, for his extensive scholarship and profound influence on the academic landscape of the Middle Ages. Today, we delve into his life, examining how his integration of Aristotelian philosophy with Christian doctrine laid the groundwork for modern scientific and philosophical inquiry. Albertus Magnus was likely born before the year 1200 in Lauingen, Bavaria, though some accounts suggest 1193 based on later references to his age at death. The precise date remains uncertain due to scant contemporary records. He hailed from a family possibly of ministerial class, though claims of noble lineage associated with the Bolstedt family are conjectural. Originating from 15th century hagiographers, Albert's formative education occurred at the University of Padua, a preeminent center for scholarly pursuits in the 13th century. There, he engaged deeply with the works of Aristotle, accessing them through Latin translations, complemented by Arab commentaries. An apocryphal account by Rudolf de Novamagia narrates that Albert experienced a divine vision of the Blessed Virgin Mary, compelling him to enter holy orders. This is a testament to the intertwining of his spiritual and intellectual commitments. In either 1223 or 1229, the exact year remains debated, Albertus Magnus entered the order of preachers, commonly known as the Dominican order. The Dominicans were dedicated to rigorous academic study and preaching, aligning with Albert's scholarly inclinations. He pursued theological studies at the University of Bologna and other notable institutions. His academic prowess quickly became evident, leading to teaching appointments in Cologne and other German cities such as Regensburg, Freiburg, Strasbourg, and Hildesheim. These roles positioned him at the nexus of emerging scholastic networks, fostering intellectual exchange across Europe. Albert's pedagogical career was marked by prolific writing and influential mentorship. His tenure as a lecturer at Cologne was particularly productive. It was here that he composed the Summa de Bono. This followed a profound dialogue with Philip the Chancellor on the transcendental properties of being. In 1245, under the tutelage of Garrick of Saint-Quentin, Albert attained the title of Master of Theology, becoming the first German Dominican to do so. Subsequently, he was appointed to the prestigious chair of theology at the College of St. James within the University of Paris. This position amplified his influence, allowing him to shape the next generation of theologians and philosophers. Among his notable students was Thomas Aquinas, whom Albert recognized as a formidable intellect. Their collaboration was instrumental in synthesizing Aristotelian philosophy with Christian theology, a hallmark of scholasticism. Albertus Magnus stands as a pivotal figure in the transmission and interpretation of Aristotelian philosophy. He was the first scholar to produce comprehensive commentaries on virtually all of Aristotle's extant works. These included the Organon, Physics, Metaphysics, De Anima, and Nicomachean Ethics. By explicating these texts, he rendered them accessible for wider academic debate in Western Europe. Moreover, Albert engaged with the works of Muslim philosophers such as Avicenna and Averroes, whose commentaries on Aristotle were instrumental in medieval philosophical discourse. He critically assessed their interpretations, integrating valuable insights while addressing perceived inconsistencies with Christian doctrine. Albert's method combined meticulous textual analysis with empirical observation, a practice exemplified in his integration of natural science and metaphysics. He posited that reason and revelation were not antagonistic but complementary avenues toward truth. This perspective undergirded the scholastic endeavor to reconcile faith with rational inquiry, significantly impacting medieval philosophy and setting a precedent for subsequent intellectual developments. In 1254, Albertus Magnus was appointed provincial of the Dominican order in Germany. His administrative acumen was evident as he meticulously oversaw the order's affairs, emphasizing academic excellence and spiritual discipline. During this period, he defended the Dominicans against criticism from secular faculties at the University of Paris, who challenged the mendicant order's roles in academia. Albert authored commentaries on the Gospel of John and addressed philosophical errors he attributed to Averroes, particularly concerning the unity of the intellect. His works reinforced orthodox positions on the individuality of the soul and the compatibility of Aristotelian philosophy with Christian teachings. Albert's influence extended to educational reform within the Dominican order. In 1259, he participated in the general chapter at Valenciennes alongside Thomas Aquinas, Bonosuomo Brito, Florentius, and Peter of Tarentaise, later Pope Innocent V. They collectively developed the Ratio Studiorum, a structured program of studies that innovatively incorporated philosophy into the curriculum for novices and scholars not yet prepared for advanced theological study. This integration of philosophy was revolutionary, emphasizing the importance of logical reasoning and metaphysical understanding as foundational to theological exploration. The Ratio Studiorum established a pedagogical framework that nurtured critical thinking and cemented the Dominicans' reputation for scholastic excellence. Institutions like the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas trace their intellectual lineage to these curricular developments. In 1260, Pope Alexander IV appointed Albertus Magnus as the Bishop of Regensburg. Demonstrating remarkable humility and adherence to his mendicant vows, Albert eschewed the customary episcopal grandeur. He traversed his extensive diocese on foot, ministering directly to the faithful and overseeing ecclesiastical affairs with diligence. After 3 years, feeling that his administrative duties impeded his scholastic endeavors, Albert resigned from the episcopate with papal consent. Pope Urban IV, acknowledging his unique contributions, relieved him of his duties. Albert then focused on preaching the Eighth Crusade in German-speaking regions, though his emphasis was more on spiritual renewal than military recruitment. Additionally, he served as a mediator in civic conflicts, most notably delivering the Great Verdict, Der Grosse Schied, in Cologne in 1258. This arbitration resolved tensions between the city's citizens and the archbishop, exemplifying Albert's diplomatic skills and commitment to justice. The intellectual partnership between Albertus Magnus and Thomas Aquinas was a cornerstone of medieval scholasticism. Albert recognized Aquinas' exceptional intellect, often referring to him as the dumb ox whose bellow would resound throughout the world, a prophetic acknowledgement of his future influence. They collaborated extensively, with Albert mentoring Aquinas in the nuances of Aristotelian philosophy and its application to Christian theology. After Aquinas' death in 1274, Albert vigorously defended his former students' works against criticisms of heterodoxy. Although accounts of Albert traveling to Paris to personally defend Aquinas cannot be conclusively verified, his written rebuttals and advocacy were instrumental in securing Aquinas' posthumous reputation. In his later years, Albertus Magnus continued to teach and write, despite declining health. He passed away on November 15, 1280, in the Dominican convent at Cologne. Initial reports of his body being incorrupt upon exhumation 3 years after his death contributed to his veneration, although a subsequent exhumation in 1483 revealed only skeletal remains, a common occurrence in medieval hagiography. Albert was beatified in 1622 and canonized by Pope Pius XI on December 16, 1931. He was also proclaimed a Doctor of the Church, a title bestowed on saints who have made significant contributions to theology and doctrine. In 1941, he was declared the patron saint of natural scientists, reflecting his enduring legacy in bridging faith and empirical inquiry. His feast day is celebrated on November 15th. The scholarly output of Albertus Magnus is monumental, with his works compiled in 38 volumes by 1899. His writings encompass a vast array of disciplines, reflecting his encyclopedic knowledge and relentless intellectual curiosity. Among his principal theological works are his commentary on the sentences of Peter Lombard and his own Summa Theology. The latter is an extensive exploration of theological topics, structured methodically to guide readers through complex doctrinal issues. Albert's philosophical writings systematically cover the breadth of Aristotelian science and metaphysics. He produced commentaries on the entire Aristotelian corpus available in Latin, including not only the logical and metaphysical works, but also those on natural philosophy, ethics, and politics. In these commentaries, Albert did not merely restate Aristotle's positions. He critically engaged with them, offering his interpretations and occasionally diverging from his predecessor when aligning with Christian teachings necessitated it. His commitment to integrating secular knowledge with spiritual understanding exemplifies the scholastic ideal that reason and revelation jointly contribute to a comprehensive grasp of truth. Albertus Magnus was a pioneer in the empirical study of the natural world. His treatises on botany, such as De Vegetalibus, cataloged plants with detailed descriptions of their forms, habitats, and medicinal properties. In zoology, his work, De Animalibus, combined information from classical sources with his own observations, covering a wide range of species and their behaviors. Perhaps most notably, Albert composed De Mineralibus, the first systematic treatise on minerals in the Western tradition. In it, he classified minerals based on their properties and origins, and discussed topics such as the generation of metals and the causes of geological formations. His methodology emphasized observation and the search for causal explanations. He asserted that natural science should not merely accept traditional authorities, but should actively investigate the mechanisms underlying natural phenomena. This approach anticipated the empirical methods that would later define the scientific revolution. Despite his substantial contributions to natural philosophy, Albertus Magnus became the subject of legends, portraying him as an alchemist and magician. Pseudo-alchemical works, such as the Secreta Alberti and Experimenta Alberti, were falsely attributed to him in the centuries following his death. Enhancing their appeal by association, authentic writings by Albert reveal a more cautious engagement with alchemical concepts. While he discussed the properties of materials and the possibility of transmutation in theoretical terms, there is little evidence that he conducted alchemical experiments or claimed to have discovered the philosopher's stone. Notably, the legend that he passed this knowledge to Thomas Aquinas lacks historical substantiation, particularly since Aquinas predeceased him by 6 years. Albert's genuine contributions to chemistry include observations on substances like arsenic and silver nitrate. His empirical approach aligned with his broader scientific methodology, focusing on verifiable phenomena rather than esoteric practices. In keeping with the intellectual climate of his time, Albertus Magnus held astrology to be a legitimate field of study within natural philosophy. He believed in a macrocosmic-microcosmic relationship, wherein celestial bodies exerted influences on earthly events. His works, Speculum Astronomiae and De Fato, articulate his views on how understanding these influences could inform ethical living and align human actions with divine order. Albert sought to reconcile astrological concepts with Christian doctrine, asserting that while stars might incline, they do not compel. He maintained that human free will and divine providence supersede any celestial determinism. His nuanced perspective reflects an attempt to integrate traditional astrological beliefs within a framework consistent with theological principles. Albert's natural philosophical inquiries extended to explaining physical phenomena such as the tides. Drawing on ancient Greek theories of light and the astrological interpretations of scholars like Abu Mashar al-Balkhi, he proposed that the moon influenced tides through a combination of gravitational attraction and the heat generated by moonlight. While scientifically inaccurate by modern standards, his hypothesis represented an effort to apply observational and theoretical knowledge to understand the natural world. In his treatises, De Natura Boni and De Bono, Albertus Magnus engaged deeply with metaphysical questions concerning the nature of goodness. He examined the concept of the good as both a transcendental attribute of being and as manifested in the physical world, bonum natura. Influenced by Neoplatonism and the works of Pseudo-Dionysius, Albert explored how the good relates to existence, essence, and the divine. He developed a theory of justice and natural law, positing that God is the ultimate legislator whose divine authority underpins moral principles. His work on natural law is particularly significant, as it represents one of the earliest comprehensive treatments of the subject by a theologian. Albert's integration of metaphysical inquiry with ethical considerations laid important groundwork for later scholastic developments in moral philosophy. Albertus Magnus extensively discussed friendship within his ethical writings, including De Bono and his later commentary, Super Ethica. Drawing on Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, he agreed that friendship is a virtue essential to the good life. Albert identified three levels of goodness: the useful, utile, the pleasurable, delectable, and the authentically good, honestum, corresponding to types of friendship based on utility, pleasure, and virtue. He emphasized that the highest form of friendship is grounded in mutual respect for each other's moral character and shared pursuit of the good. By integrating classical philosophical perspectives with Christian ethical thought, Albert underscored the role of virtuous relationships in personal moral development and the attainment of spiritual fulfillment. Albertus Magnus's reputation extended beyond his lifetime, influencing literary and philosophical works. Dante Alighieri placed him alongside Thomas Aquinas among the great lovers of wisdom in the Paradiso of his Divine Comedy. The esteem in which he was held is reflected in his inclusion among the luminaries who shaped intellectual history. Later philosophers and writers continued to reference Albert. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe and Søren Kierkegaard engaged with his ideas, and Mary Shelley alluded to him in Frankenstein, where Victor Frankenstein studies his works. These references attest to Albert's enduring impact on Western thought and culture. Albertus Magnus's legacy is celebrated worldwide through institutions bearing his name. Albertus Magnus College in New Haven, Connecticut, and the Albertus Magnus Gymnasium in Rottweil, Germany, are among numerous schools honoring his contributions to education and scholarship. The University of Cologne features a square named Albertus Magnus Platz, adorned with a statue commemorating his influence. In recognition of his patronage of natural scientists, his feast day is observed by those in scientific fields. His methodologies and commitment to the harmonious pursuit of knowledge continue to inspire academic curricula and scholastic traditions. The integration of faith and reason, championed by Albert, remains a foundational principle in many educational institutions. Albertus Magnus stands as a quintessential figure, bridging the gap between medieval scholasticism and the dawn of modern scientific thought. His exhaustive scholarship and dedication to the integration of empirical observation with philosophical and theological inquiry set a precedent for intellectual rigor. By harmonizing Aristotelian philosophy with Christian doctrine, he forged a path that allowed for the coexistence of faith and reason. His influence persists in contemporary discourse, encouraging a holistic approach to knowledge that values interdisciplinary exploration. As we reflect on his life and works, Albertus Magnus continues to inspire scholars to pursue truth in all its dimensions, fostering a legacy of intellectual curiosity and profound wisdom.